Wait, what if a single song could change a boy's entire life in just a few minutes? Imagine standing on a huge stage in a foreign country, lights shining in your eyes, thousands watching, judges staring at you, and all you have is your voice in a dream. But before this story begins, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that miracles can happen when talent meets courage. On a rainy evening in Dublin, the stage of Ireland's Got Talent was buzzing with excitement. Contestants from all over the world had come to prove themselves, but nobody expected that the most unforgettable moment of the night would come from a quiet boy from the Philippines. His name was Miguel Santos, a 14-year-old boy who had traveled thousands of miles with his mother for this one chance. Miguel wasn't dressed like a superstar. He wore a simple white shirt, slightly wrinkled black pants, and worn-out shoes that had clearly seen better days. But behind his shy smile was a heart full of music. Back home in a small village near Cebu, Miguel's life wasn't easy. His father had passed away years ago while working overseas, leaving his mother to raise Miguel alone. She worked long hours at a small laundry shop just to put food on the table. Many nights, the electricity in their home would go out, and Miguel would sit outside under the streetlight practicing songs he loved. But there was one artist who always inspired him more than anyone else, Elvis Presley. Miguel had discovered Elvis through an old radio his father once owned. The moment he heard "Can't Help Falling in Love," something changed inside him. He started imitating Elvis's voice, studying his style, and dreaming that one day he could sing on a big stage. His mother was the first person who believed in him. Even when money was tight, she encouraged him to keep singing. Sometimes, after long days at work, she would sit quietly while Miguel performed little concerts in their tiny living room. One day, a video of Miguel singing Elvis at a local school event went viral online. Within weeks, people around the world had seen it. And that video somehow reached the producers of Ireland's Got Talent. When Miguel received the invitation to audition, it felt unreal. They had never even traveled outside the Philippines before. With help from donations in their community and a small sponsor who believed in his talent, Miguel and his mother finally boarded a plane to Ireland. Now here he was, standing on the biggest stage of his life. The judges looked curious as Miguel stepped forward. Among them sat Simon Cowell, known for being brutally honest and very hard to impress. Simon leaned forward and asked, "So Miguel, why did you come all the way from the Philippines to sing here?" Miguel swallowed nervously. His voice trembled slightly as he answered, "Because my father always told me music can reach anywhere in the world, and I want to make my mother proud." The audience fell silent. Then Simon asked the most important question, "What are you going to sing for us today?" Miguel smiled softly and replied, "An Elvis Presley song." Some people in the audience exchanged doubtful looks. Singing Elvis was risky. His songs were iconic, and many contestants had failed trying to copy him. But the music started. The soft opening notes of "Can't Help Falling in Love" filled the theater. Miguel closed his eyes for a moment and began to sing. The first note shocked everyone. His voice was warm, deep, and unbelievably emotional for someone so young. It wasn't just an imitation of Elvis, it felt like Miguel was pouring his entire life story into the song. The audience slowly leaned forward. Every word carried feeling. Every note felt honest. The way he held certain lines made it sound hauntingly beautiful. The camera cut to the judges. One by one, their expressions changed from curiosity to amazement. Simon Cowell, the toughest judge of them all, stared quietly at the boy. His usual serious expression softened. Miguel continued singing, completely lost in the music. At that moment, he wasn't thinking about the crowd, the cameras, or the judges. He was thinking about his father. Back home. Listening through that old radio. The song reached its emotional peak, and Miguel delivered the final line with a powerful, heartfelt note that echoed through the entire theater. The room exploded with applause. People jumped to their feet. The entire audience was standing. But something unexpected happened. Simon Cowell's eyes were filled with tears. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything. Then suddenly, smash! Simon slammed his hand on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained down from the ceiling as the crowd screamed with excitement. Miguel stood frozen in disbelief. He covered his face with his hands as tears rolled down his cheeks. His mother rushed onto the stage and hugged him tightly while golden confetti surrounded them. The judges were clapping, the audience was cheering, and Simon stood up smiling. When the noise finally settled, Simon walked onto the stage. He looked directly at Miguel and said something nobody there would ever forget. "You didn't just sing Elvis, you made the song your own. That was one of the most emotional auditions I've ever seen." Miguel wiped his tears as the crowd applauded again. Simon continued, "Your father would be incredibly proud of you." Those words made Miguel cry even more. That night, Miguel Santos became the first Filipino contestant to receive a golden buzzer on Ireland's Got Talent. But more importantly, he proved something powerful. You don't need expensive clothes, fame, or a perfect life to achieve your dreams. Sometimes all it takes is passion, courage, and the belief of one person who refuses to give up on you. From singing under a streetlight in a small Filipino village to standing under golden confetti on an international stage, Miguel's journey reminded the world that dreams have no borders. And who knows? The next incredible story might belong to someone watching this video right now. So if this story inspired you even a little, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs motivation, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories that prove ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Wait, before this story begins, imagine this for a moment. A young boy stands alone on a massive stage in a country far from home. Bright lights shine in his eyes, thousands of strangers watch him, and the most famous judge in the world is staring right at him. He is nervous, his hands are shaking, but inside his heart lives a dream bigger than fear. What happens next will leave the entire audience speechless and even make Simon Cowell cry. But before we continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories that inspire millions of people around the world. It was a cold evening in Dublin, Ireland. Outside the theatre of Ireland's Got Talent, the rain gently tapped on the sidewalks, while inside the building the atmosphere was electric. Contestants from many countries were waiting nervously backstage, each hoping their performance would be the one that everyone would remember. Among them stood a small, quiet boy from the Philippines. His name was Cruz, only 15 years old. He looked around the backstage hallway filled with talented singers, dancers, and performers, and for a moment he wondered if he truly belonged there. Daniel's clothes were simple. A plain blue shirt, black jeans, and shoes that had clearly been worn many times before. But his eyes carried something powerful, determination. Back in the Philippines, Daniel grew up in a poor fishing village near Manila. Life there was difficult. His father worked long nights at sea catching fish just to support the family, while his mother sold vegetables in the local market. Money was always tight. Some days they barely had enough for food. But despite their struggles, there was always one thing that filled their small home with happiness: music. Daniel discovered music through an old cassette player that once belonged to his uncle. One day, while searching through old tapes, he found something that would change his life forever. It was Elvis Presley. The moment Daniel heard the song "Love Me Tender," he felt something special. The voice, the emotion, the passion, it all touched his heart in a way he had never experienced before. From that day on, Daniel became obsessed with Elvis's music. Every evening after school, he would sit near the ocean, listening to Elvis songs and trying to copy the voice. At first, he sounded nothing like the legend. But Daniel never gave up. Months turned into years. His voice slowly grew stronger and more emotional. Soon people in the village began to notice something extraordinary. When Daniel sang Elvis songs, it felt real. Not like a copy. Like a tribute from the heart. One day, during a local festival, Daniel performed on a small stage in front of his community. Someone in the crowd recorded the performance and uploaded it online. Within days, thousands of people started sharing the video. Then something unbelievable happened. The producers of Ireland's Got Talent saw it. A few weeks later, Daniel and his family received an email inviting him to audition in Dublin. At first they thought it was a joke. Traveling from the Philippines to Ireland seemed impossible for a poor family. But the village came together to help. Neighbors donated small amounts of money, local businesses helped with travel costs, and soon Daniel and his mother were boarding a plane for the first time in their lives. After more than 16 hours of travel, they finally arrived in Ireland. Now Daniel stood backstage, hearing the crowd cheering for the contestant before him. His heart was beating fast. A staff member smiled and said, "Daniel, you're next." He took a deep breath and walked toward. Wait, imagine being a young boy standing on a giant stage in a country far away from home. Bright lights are shining in your eyes, thousands of people are watching, and the most famous judge in the world is staring at you, waiting to hear the first note. Your hands are shaking, your heart is beating fast, and this single moment could change your entire life forever. What happens next will leave the audience in tears and make Simon Cowell press the golden buzzer instantly. But before we continue this emotional journey, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss powerful stories that prove dreams really can come true. The theatre in Dublin was packed that night. The stage of Ireland's Got Talent glowed with bright lights, cameras moved around the audience, and contestants waited nervously backstage. Everyone wanted their moment. Everyone hoped they would be remembered. But nobody expected that the most unforgettable performance would come from a quiet Filipino boy with a simple dream. His name was Marco Reyes. He was only 15 years old, thin and slightly shy, with gentle eyes and a nervous smile. When he walked onto the stage, some people in the audience noticed how simple he looked. He wore a white shirt tucked into black pants and old shoes that had clearly been worn for years. He didn't look like a superstar. But inside him was something far more powerful than appearance, a story. Marco grew up in a small town in the Philippines where life was not easy. His father had once worked as a construction worker in another country but never returned after an accident at work. From that day forward, Marco's mother raised him and his younger sister alone. She worked long hours cleaning houses just to earn enough money for food and school supplies. Their house was small and sometimes the electricity would go out for hours. But whenever life felt difficult, Marco would turn to music. One day, while cleaning the house, his mother found an old radio that had belonged to Marco's father. The radio was dusty and barely worked, but when they finally managed to fix it, music began to fill the room. That was the first time Marco heard Elvis Presley. The song playing on the radio was "Can't Help Falling in Love." The voice was smooth, emotional, and powerful. Marco sat quietly, listening to every word. Something about that song touched his heart deeply. From that moment on, Elvis Presley became Marco's hero. Every day after school, Marco would listen to Elvis songs and try to sing along. At first he struggled to reach the notes, but he practiced again and again. Sometimes neighbors passing by their house would stop outside just to listen. Soon people in the neighborhood began saying something surprising. When Marco sings Elvis, it feels like the spirit of the song is alive again. Marco didn't think much about fame or success. He simply loved music. But one afternoon at a small school event, his teacher convinced him to perform on stage. Someone in the crowd recorded the performance and posted it online. Within days the video started spreading across social media. Thousands of people were sharing it and leaving comments about the young boy with the incredible voice. One of those videos eventually reached the producers of Ireland's Got Talent. When the invitation arrived, Marco and his mother couldn't believe it. Traveling from the Philippines to Ireland seemed impossible for a family with almost no money. But sometimes when people see real talent, they want to help. Marco's community raised funds, local businesses donated small amounts, and soon the impossible became reality. For the first time in his life, Marco boarded an airplane. After many hours of travel, he finally arrived in Ireland with his mother by his side. Now, standing on the stage of Ireland's Got Talent, Marco could feel the nerves building inside him. The judges smiled as he stepped forward. Among them sat Simon Cowell, known around the world for his brutally honest opinions. Simon leaned forward slightly and asked, "Hello young man, what's your name?" Marco took a deep breath. "My name is Marco Reyes." "And where are you from, Marco?" From the Philippines. The audience applauded warmly. Simon raised his eyebrows with interest. That's a long way to travel. Why did you come all the way here? Marco hesitated for a moment before answering honestly. I want to make my mother proud, and I want to honor my father who loved music. The audience fell silent. Simon nodded slowly. That's beautiful. So what song will you sing for us today? Marco smiled softly. An Elvis Presley song. A few people in the audience whispered nervously. Singing Elvis on such a big stage was a huge challenge. Many singers had tried before and failed. But Marco closed his eyes for a moment as the music began. The soft instrumental of Can't Help Falling in Love filled the theater. Then Marco started to sing. The very first note stunned the entire room. His voice was rich, emotional, and incredibly powerful. It carried a depth that nobody expected from such a young boy. Every word felt genuine, like he was telling his own story through the song. The audience leaned forward, completely captivated. The judges looked at each other in surprise. Marco wasn't just singing. He was feeling every lyric. As the performance continued, the atmosphere in the theater became magical. People in the audience began wiping tears from their eyes. The song had become more than music, it had become a moment of pure emotion. The camera moved to Simon Cowell. At first he looked shocked. Then slowly, something unusual happened. His eyes filled with tears. Marco reached the final chorus of the song, delivering the last notes with incredible passion and control. His voice echoed beautifully through the theater as the final note faded into silence. For a moment, nobody moved. Then suddenly the entire audience stood up. A massive standing ovation filled the theater. But before Marco could even react, Simon Cowell reached forward and slammed his hand on the golden buzzer. The loud buzz echoed through the theater as golden confetti exploded from above. The audience screamed with excitement. Marco stood frozen, completely shocked as golden confetti rained down around him. Tears filled his eyes as he realized what had just happened. His mother ran onto the stage and hugged him tightly. Both of them were crying as the crowd continued cheering. Simon stood up from the judges' table and walked onto the stage. He looked directly at Marco and said softly, "You didn't just sing that song, you made everyone here feel it. That was one of the most emotional performances I've ever seen." The audience applauded even louder. Simon placed a hand on Marco's shoulder and added, "Your father would be incredibly proud tonight." Marco couldn't hold back his tears anymore. In that moment, a boy from a small Filipino town had touched the hearts of thousands of people in a theater on the other side of the world. His journey proved something truly powerful. Dreams are not limited by where you come from. They are powered by passion, courage, and the belief that your voice matters. From singing beside an old radio in a tiny home to standing under golden confetti on an international stage, Marco's story became an inspiration to millions. And who knows, maybe someone watching this video right now also has a dream waiting to be discovered. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs inspiration, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories that remind us that even the smallest voices can create the biggest miracles. Wait, stop scrolling for a moment and imagine this scene. A young boy from a poor village in the Philippines walks onto one of the biggest talent show stages in Europe. The lights are blinding, the crowd is silent, and the judges are watching closely. He looks small, nervous, and completely out of place. But what happens in the next few minutes will shock the entire theater and bring the toughest judge in the world to tears. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss powerful stories like this that remind us that dreams can come from anywhere. The night was electric in Dublin, Ireland. The Theatre of Ireland's Got Talent was filled with excitement as contestants from different countries waited nervously backstage. Some were dancers, some were magicians, and many were singers hoping their voice would be the one that captured the judges' hearts. But among all those talented performers was a quiet 14-year-old boy from the Philippines named Raphael Mendoza. Raphael stood backstage holding his number tag tightly. His heart was beating so fast it felt like everyone around him could hear it. He looked down at his clothes, a simple white shirt, dark jeans, and slightly worn shoes. Nothing about him looked glamorous or special. But Raphael wasn't thinking about appearances. He was thinking about home. Back in the Philippines, Raphael lived in a small coastal village where life was simple but often difficult. His father worked long hours as a fisherman, leaving before sunrise and sometimes returning late at night with barely enough fish to sell at the market. His mother worked at a small roadside food stall selling noodles and rice dishes to passing travelers. The family worked hard every single day just to survive. Their house was tiny, made of wood and tin sheets that rattled loudly whenever storms passed through the village. But despite the struggles, Raphael had something that brought light into his life. Music. When Raphael was only 9 years old, he discovered an old broken radio in a small storage box that once belonged to his grandfather. After fixing it with the help of a neighbor, the radio suddenly came to life. One of the first songs Raphael heard through